Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to our Aquarium Online Academy. My name is James Stewart. I am the Boat Programs Coordinator here at the Aquarium of the Pacific in Long Beach, California. So we're going to talk today a little bit about what does someone in my career path do, but then we're going to focus a lot on what does a photo ID person do. So the whale watch programs that we have here, we partner with two different companies. We partner with Harbor Breeze Cruises, which is right outside the aquarium at the docks right here. And we also partner with Cascadia Research Collective. So on our previous Career Connection program, we talked a little bit more about my role. But today we're going to focus a little bit more into what does the photo ID program do too. Now, if you're watching live, you can text in questions to us at 562-286-1838, and our staff here in the office will be able to answer some of those. They'll also give those questions to me so that I can answer them for you live on the air also. Now, if you're watching this at a different time that's not live, you can still ask questions. We have an email that you can send questions into, which is live@lbaop.org. So live@lbaop.org. Now, my friend Amanda is going to help us go through the program here. And if you have questions, please send them in. And let's get started talking about what does a person that's in charge of a whale watch program do. So my history is a little bit different than some of the other people that have worked at an aquarium. And my role is an informal educator. So what does that mean? I am one of the teachers here at the aquarium. So the field trip groups that come in, we talk to them, we teach them classes in the morning, but I'm also in charge of a couple of different programs. One of which is our studio here that we're airing from today, but the other is the whale watch. Now, a couple times in a month, maybe more, I get to be on the whale watch as the naturalist, the person that's narrating and educating. But that's not the main focus of my role. A lot of what I do is training the other people to do this task or these education jobs as well. So not only do I help train our new naturalists to be on the boat, so what kind of information should they be using? What kind of questions should we be asking? How do we engage a diverse group of guests out on a whale watch where you're stuck on a boat with them for 2 to 3 hours? You have to be able to interact with them and teach them about the animals that they're seeing. But I also help run our photo ID internship. So we have a great opportunity for young people or older people. You don't have to be in college to participate in our internships, but you can come to the Aquarium of the Pacific and learn about these different career paths or career paths you want to get into, and we give you some of that real world work experience. Now, many of our staff in other departments have interned or volunteered much later into their career and have come into this field of work, working at a zoo or aquarium. And I kind of did that too. So my history is I started as a classroom educator in Colorado. And I did that for a little while, and I had an opportunity to move out here to California to get into marine science, and that was kind of my passion when I was a teenager. I grew up in Colorado and there's no oceans, but I always loved the ocean. I hadn't actually ever visited the ocean until I was 12 years old. We went on one vacation and we got to go along the West Coast, and I became so enamored with the ocean that I started looking for opportunities to learn more about it. And then I took a trip in high school that gave me class credit to go and do some practice data collection and research at a coral reef. So that was a really great opportunity. But how do you get to do some of these things too? Well, let's keep talking about other things that we do here at the aquarium. So we can go to the next slide. And if you want to work at a zoo or aquarium, there's a lot of different places in that space that you can be and that you can work on. You don't have to be an educator like myself. You don't have to do a whole lot of the very public roles. You can work behind the scenes in a lot of cases. But if you do want to be out in front of everybody, these are one of the things that we do here is on our whale watch boats. We're out there as the educators and the narrators. So we try to answer the questions from our guests, talk about the animals that we're seeing, and provide that experience with animal artifacts to help provide that connection between us and nature. And it's an amazing opportunity that Harbor Breeze Cruises has these boats so we can get out into that environment and show people the animals that live right here in our coastal ocean. Now, some of the skills you need if you want to be a naturalist, if you want to be out in front of the people narrating and talking, public speaking is always a strong skill to have. It really does help you tell a better story about the nature that you want to impart into your guests. So you have to be a little more personable, and you have to be willing to learn. So not only are your guests that you're talking to learners, but you are a learner as well. There's so much information to learn. I am our whale expert here, but I still go to conferences and I still read scientific papers all year long to keep up on all the newest information that is coming out about whales and marine mammal science. So let's go into the next one. These are some of the things that we've seen. Now we'll get into the photo ID projects in just a couple slides, but this is some of the stuff that we've seen. Now the cool part about this is all these photos that you're seeing here were taken by our interns. I didn't search on the internet for any of these. I wasn't looking for anything else besides what have we already taken pictures of, because we have a lot of amazing pictures in here. So we have orca, we have bottlenose, we have our Rizzo's dolphins, the Pacific white-sided, which is one of my favorite dolphins we have. We only see them seasonally, so I really do love to get in the wintertime when I get to get out and see them. And then we have the common dolphins down here on the bottom. Now, we'll have a couple questions coming in, so I'll start with a couple of those. Bella is asking, on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard is your job? That's kind of hard to assess because some things are very difficult and some things are probably not as difficult, but you have to do it a lot or very repetitively. So the difficult thing for me, personally, is I do get seasick. Like, wait, the person in charge of your whale watch program gets seasick? That seems weird. There's a lot of marine scientists that get motion sick. So don't feel like that stops you from going out and researching in the ocean. One of the conferences I was at, a very famous marine science researcher was in a documentary. And in the documentary, while they're filming on a small inflatable boat, just about 6 of them in the boat, he was sick, like actually sick, leaning over the boat, and they got that in the documentary. And he felt so embarrassed by it. But everybody was just messaging and talking to him. This humanizes you. This makes you more connected to the other people around us, that we can do what you're doing. So don't feel like if you want to be a marine scientist, you can never get seasick. I have. It happens. It happens to everybody. So I would say that's a tough thing. If I have to go out every day on a boat, it becomes a little tough for my system to adjust to that. But one of the more enjoyable things about it, even though it is kind of tough, is scheduling all the different things for all of my staff. So all of our naturalists are not here on every day of the week. So I have to try and communicate with them a lot and keep them all up to date on all the important information that is coming out. But also work with our whale watch company partners outside the aquarium. So I also have to be the liaison, the kind of mediator in some cases of the aquarium's mission and goals and the whale watch company's mission and goals. So there's a little bit of that part that is more difficult because that's just the nature of working with people. It's not always easy to work with everybody, but we find a way to make everything agreeable and so that we can have a great experience with our guests and the whale watch company can get out and find all the beautiful whales and dolphins that we get to see here. Now, another question was, how many humpback whales have I seen? I wish I could have kept count, but there are a few that I've personally seen. Now, on the next slide, I think actually I have a picture of our humpback whale. Now, this whale right here, I've seen this whale probably 5 or 6 times. This is a very well-recognized whale. There's 2 little dots right here on their fluke. If you were able to zoom in, it almost looks like somebody glued googly eyes onto this tail. I kid you not, and my friend over here at the computer answering questions, when I showed them that picture the very first time, they thought I had photoshopped it. No lie. That's the actual barnacle scars on this whale. Now, this whale has been identified for a number of years and frequents the Southern California waters a lot. Yeah, if you can see, like right there, it almost really looks like googly eyes. So that was my initial nickname for this humpback whale. Turns out it already had a recognized name because somebody else had identified it. So the whale's name that is registered is Chief. Now, Chief does like to hang out and visits us every winter. So it's kind of a fun thing to come back and go, oh, I recognize this whale. Or you're looking through the camera viewfinder and you zoom in on the tail and you're like, oh, it is Chief. I got to see Chief again. Another one that we've seen pretty frequently is Oscar/Olivia. Scientists don't know if it's male or female, so they've assigned both names until they have more evidence to figure out if it's male or female. So Oscar/Olivia has come into the area a number of times also. And that one is recognizable because instead of having these little patches right here, it has almost a solid white fluke. And in the middle where it's black, there's this really white ring from a barnacle scar. So Oscar/Olivia is pretty recognizable also. Now, the program that we specifically focus on here are for blue whales. We try to identify individual blue whales. So just like someone identified Chief with the patterns on the underside of their tail, our interns here are using photos to identify individual blue whales. Now, if you want to know the other animals that are in the screen, this is a fin whale, second largest species of whale on the planet. And this one in the corner, hiding behind our question box, that is a gray whale. Now, gray whales are in season. They're kind of ending their season a little bit here. At the end of April, we'll probably stop seeing gray whales. They migrate from Alaska to Mexico and back again. Now, this is also a humpback whale down here. This was Scarlet. Scarlet was also very recognizable because of the number of scars that she had on her. That's not why she got named Scarlet. Scarlet was named Scarlet because while she was ill, she had a lot of whale lice that started inhabiting her skin. And whale lice is kind of an orangey pink color. And there was so much whale lice covering her skin that she kind of looked red. That's partially how she got her nickname. So Scarlet was very recognizable for a while, and we were very happy to see when the lice started to go away. That means she's getting healthier. Now, Scarlet did have a number of injuries that happened to her, probably from either a ship strike or an entanglement in her history, that she wasn't going to be extremely healthy ever again, which is unfortunate. It is one of the hazards of being a whale in the ocean, is human interaction. So Scarlet, I believe, passed away a couple of years ago, but scientists were able to also still monitor Scarlet after she had passed away, and we were recording the animals that showed up to scavenge on a dead animal. So while that seems kind of morbid and gross, it's important to know the interspecies relationships, who's showing up for what and who's consuming what. So even though I was very upset to hear that Scarlet had passed away, it was still interesting as a scientific reference to understand why the other animals might show up when Scarlet had passed away and what was going on, all the different biology and ecosystem design that was going on there. So yes, I was very heartbroken when I heard that Scarlet had passed away, because I had been able to see Scarlet many times on the whale watches too. All right, now Bella's asking, what is a barnacle scar? So while we still have Chief looking here, we can also take a look at our gray whale down here. Now, these are two whales that do get a lot of barnacles that grow on them. At some point, the barnacle does die on its own too. So they have their own lifespan that they reach the end of, and they do pass away. And then the barnacle doesn't stay there. So they're not just covered in barnacle shells. The barnacle will fall off. And the lice I was talking about earlier, it's not like human lice. It's a little crustacean. And they will eat the dead skin of a whale, but also consume the barnacles and kind of kick them off after the barnacle passes away. So what's left are little scars at times of the remnant of where that barnacle was. So humpback whales and gray whales, you'll find that they get more and more barnacle scars or even other marks on their fluke as they age. So if we looked at Chief 5-6 years ago, the number of marks that would be on their tail are probably less. So just like we get scars on our body, it adds to how we identify ourselves, because you can tell if it's you, if you have the right kind of patterns on your skin. We can tell that with whales. And if we have a new picture of a whale with new marks and new identifiers, we update the records of that whale. So let's move on to the next page. So Laura I was just told by our friend Alicia, Laura was asking if there's an international database to track whales. And are they identifiable traits for them to use in photo ID? And the cool thing is, I think they finished their doctorate now, so I think it's Dr. Ted Cheeseman. He started a website called Happy Whale, and their project whale were humpback whales. So they were creating not only a database using Cascadia Research Collective's known list of humpback whales, but now they're crowdsourcing and they're using community or citizen science projects where anybody could go out on a whale watch with a camera, you get a GPS coordinate of this whale, send it to them on their website, and it will try to identify the individual whales. Now, those programs, those what were called algorithms, are being used on blue whales too. And I think they're trying to do it with fin whales, but fin whales, their body coloration is much darker. They don't have the same blotches on their body, so it's a little bit tougher to do that. So Cascadia Research Collective has a database of the eastern North Pacific blue whale population. There are some databases of gray whales. But the gray whale population is about 26,000 whales, give or take. So it's a little tougher to get a database of the full number of them. Now, we potentially could because they do migrate all the way down the west coast. So if there were connected research stations, people communicating all the way down, identifying each group of gray whales, we could create this massive known database of gray whales. And I think that's one of the future goals, is we would like to have a database of every known animal so that we can study their populations. We learn more about who is where and who's doing what and how many babies are they having per year, all these different things. So this is one of my favorite pages to show on our Career Connections, is some of the really amazing sightings that we've had. So this is a blue whale cow and calf. So there's the baby blue whale. That's not a different type of whale. That's the baby. This is a sperm whale. And here is a humpback whale with dolphins playing with them. There's a lot of times where we see whales and dolphins hanging out in the same space. Sometimes they're both feeding on the same food. So humpbacks and common dolphins and bottlenose dolphins will eat similar fish. Every once in a while, we see them do something called bow riding. So it's like the front of the boat is the bow, and they'll hang out in front of a boat. Well, guess what? They'll kind of ride in front of a whale too. So this is really fun when you get to see multiple species playing potentially or communicating with each other out in nature. Now, this one down here in the corner, this is another humpback whale. So we see a lot of them. This is a whale called chompers. Chompers likes to come up to the surface, and when the whales, you can almost see the throat pleats right there. The throat pleats expand so you can get a big gulp of water with food in it, and then the muscles contract and they can squirt the water out of the mouth. We don't really get to see that because they're usually underwater, but chompers likes to stick their face up and squirt the water out. Now, someone might be wondering, well, how do you know if any of these, besides this one has a calf, is a boy, girl? How do you know if they're male or female? Well, that's really the only way we can tell without doing a skin test. We take a genetic test. We take a little bit of sample of them, and we can test it just like we would test a person or a dog for genetic factors. You could do that, but the other way that we do it, we just wait, and after so many years, you might see that they have a baby with them. And since big whales are not group family-oriented, they tend to stay solitary. If it has a baby with it, it's a female. So Oscar Olivia, talked about before, if we ever see them with a calf, we'll know if it's male or female. But Chief has not been seen with a calf for, I think, like 6 years, so we're assuming that Chief is a male. Now, Chompers, we found out, is female. So we saw Chompers with a calf doing this exact behavior, and we matched up the fluke print, and like, well, that's Chompers, but Chompers now we're going to record is female because we finally observed them with a calf. And because of the photo ID work of researchers being out on the water, photographing and identifying animals, we can learn more about these specific things. All right, let's move into the next picture. And let's talk more about the actual photo ID work. What is a person that is doing animal ID doing? Now, you can do this with more than just whales. There's a lot of people that I've talked to and know that have done what are called photo capture cameras, where an animal kind of walks in front of it and a sensor clicks a photo, and they have to just thumb through hundreds or thousands of photos at times to figure out if it's a picture of the thing they want. So if you're looking for the number of photos that have a bobcat or a raccoon or whatever animal is your target animal, the first phase is just going through all your photos and figuring out which ones have the animal you want. From there, they can do more analysis. Well, for whales, it's a little bit different because we're out looking for the whales, so we're targeting where they should be, where are they at, and so we can take pictures of them, and then we just have this stock of photos that we can go back to and analyze later. So the internship involves them going through the photos, analyzing who's a who, but also recording a lot of the data from physically doing it on a clipboard into the digital database. So the old school way of doing this is you'd be out on the water, you record everything, and you just keep paper files of all of this. Then it morphed into recording it into an electronic database. Some researchers are instantaneously just going straight into the electronic version, where they take a computer or a tablet or some other electronic device with them, and they're recording this information immediately. Because of the nature of what we're doing, and because there's only one intern on a boat at a time, and it's already pretty tough to take pictures and then record who's doing what, we still go with the paper record version first, and then they transfer it into the computer later. So don't forget to text in your questions. My friend Alicia's got a couple more stocked up, so I'll answer those before we move on. Remember, you can text us at 562-286-1838 if you're watching live, so you can ask us some questions here in the studio. So Bella asked, do most whales have a name? Yes and no. So we do try to give them a name to help make them more unique and make it easier for us to connect with that animal, that we care a little bit more if we can identify who they are. They're not some letter number designation. Like, you imagine how astronomers have named stars. They're just identified by some alphanumeric code. Now eventually they kind of get good styled English or human styled names, or even other languages of names. Like Sirius is a type of star. So we can identify it a little bit easier. It's a little bit more memorable than memorizing this long code. But once we have them identified, they don't always get a humanistic name. And that's just depending on the researchers that are doing it. Sometimes we name them based off of characteristics that we see on them. A blue whale we have not seen in a number of years, which does make me a little concerned, is a blue whale named Delta. Now, Delta has a really interesting fluke. So instead of just being out, on the edges, it kind of curves up. So it almost looks like an airplane tail. So that's how Delta got their name. There's another gray whale that I actually have personally seen this one, and it was injured a long time ago in a boat incident. Probably a boat ran into it, and it hurt its back. It very significantly damaged the back of the gray whale. And to just make a very simple name of what it is, this whale was named Scarback. So Scarback is healthy. We've seen it multiple years in a row. So even if they're injured pretty badly, we may still see them repeatedly over the time that we're analyzing and recording data in that area. Now there's another question of what is the difference between a gray and humpback whale? Very good question. So here's a standard picture of a humpback underwater. One of the identifying markers of a humpback is the long pectoral fin, the smaller dorsal fin, and these knobs on their face. So these knobs, these are called tubercles. They're actually hair follicles. So if you were able to zoom in far enough, you could see little tiny hairs. So while we assume that whales have no hair, they actually do, which is kind of really cool to get to watch. So that it tells you this is a humpback whale. If you were looking at a gray whale, the nose is going to be the rostrum. It's going to be a little bit different shape, shorter pectoral flippers, and a gray whale actually has no dorsal fin. It's just called a dorsal ridge or dorsal hump. So you can tell a little bit about a whale when you look at a picture. When we're on the water and we are exploring, looking for whales, we're looking for the blow. Here's the blowhole. When they exhale, there's this big puff that comes up. And that's the water that was sitting on their nose. So it's not that the water was sitting in their lungs. It's the water that was sitting on their nose, which is on the back of their head. And as soon as they exhale, it blows that up in the air. For gray whales, if you're in the right angle, that blow is a heart shape. So it comes up straight into a heart shape. For a humpback, it's just kind of a wide cone shape. For a blue whale, it's a very tall, narrow cone. So a blue whale blow might be 20, 25 feet tall, whereas a humpback blow might be half of that. So depending on the shape of the blow, you can also tell what whale you have just spotted out in the water. All right, let's move on to the next page. This is some of the work that the interns do. So, there is some of the glamorous, taking pictures, having fun on the whale watch, but even in cold weather, rainy weather, really rocky seas, they're still recording anything that is spotted. They may not get a photograph of the animal, but they're still recording who they've seen. So here's one of my former interns, Jackie. They have been instrumental in helping this program. They stayed on as a volunteer. So not only do I have photo ID interns, I have photo ID volunteers that help process data after the interns have gone. So the interns only have a season of about 4 months. And in that process, or in that time, they take a lot of photos, they process their own data first, but then to make sure that the data is very correctly input and that we can send it to Cascadia Research Collective, the volunteers help edit and proofread everything that we have. So the volunteers are an amazing team that come in on their own time, that they really love photo ID work, and they get to go out on whale watches every once in a while, just like the interns do, but they're doing a lot of the behind-the-scenes computer processing work that is really necessary to make sure that we are sending accurate information to the next group of researchers. So on the boat, they have to make sure that they're recording all of the positions of the animals, positions of the boat. So the little yellow device right there next to Tammy That is a GPS unit. So they are writing down the GPS coordinates of where they're at. And in case that little device dies, they have to manually record where was the boat, because the device is tracking where the boat is. It records a point every minute, and we use that to do something called geotagging. So we add that coordinate of where we took that photo to the photo that we took. And that way, anybody else that we send this photo to knows exactly the location that this animal was seen in. So they don't always have to have the printed version or the electronic version. If all they need is a coordinate, I can send them the photo. So they have the photo itself, then they have the coordinates of where that animal is at. Now, a couple more questions we got are, do we get to feed whales? I would love to get to feed a whale. Unfortunately, we cannot. The whales are protected under what's called the Marine Mammal Protection Act. And there's regulations for how close we can even get to the whales. So those photos may look really amazing, but we're using a pretty long lens to go and watch the animals. Now, the animals, if they come too close to us, we have to try and back away and not be too close to them. Or we just kind of stop engines, don't go anywhere, wait for them to go away or move far enough away from us that we can continue to follow them. Under no circumstance are we able to cross in front of a whale. So that is a safety measure for the animals. We can stay off to their sides or we can stay behind them, but we cannot cross in front of them. And then there's distances that we have to try and maintain so that we don't get too close to the animals. Because of that, we can't feed them. Now, if we did get to feed them, we might inadvertently train them to come to people to feed from. So if you imagine if you ever went to any national park or even just a city park, and the squirrels and the chipmunks come up to you all the time, it's because people have probably fed them. And so they're used to people doing that. And so they really want to come back to that person or to any person to get food. Now we have another question from Bella. Based on Chomper's actions, will her calf develop the same behaviors of shooting water out? That's a possibility. We do see what's called matrilineal learning. So the mothers teach the young how to do things. This is a lot more common with toothed whales, or even it's been observed in sea otters too. With baleen whales, they don't always teach them what or how to eat. So the baby will wean or stop feeding from mom, nursing from mom, after, in most cases of most species, 6 to 8 months. And what scientists have observed is that at that point, mom and baby might hang out a little bit, but eventually baby just stops hanging out with mom. So there's not a long-term learning process of how to hunt the fish and the other animals from mom. Now, that being said, we don't know everything. It is possible that Chomper's baby, while Chomper's is feeding, may learn to do the same behavior. And the whales are very smart animals. They have a very large brain to body size, just like we do. So it is possible that they may learn from their mom. We just have not been able to test it or learn that about whales yet. So, Bella, keep watching for scientific research on baleen whale learning from parents. That's a pretty cool thing to ask. Now, Laura's asking, when taking skin from whales for DNA sequencing, has a database of different species of whales been created? Yes. So once they know about that animal, they can continue to record hormone levels, any toxins that are in their body. They can learn quite a bit. It's called a skin plug. And while on us, it might be like a tiny little needle that you get an injection, like every year from the doctor from, on a whale, it has to be a little bit bigger. They're a big animal, and even though we take a plug that's about the thickness of your finger, it doesn't really hurt them that much. And we only take a little bit out of their skin, and we can learn a lot about their bodies. But it's just like your medical records. Anything that is learned about you from any tests done for you or on you are saved to your file. Well, these researchers save that information to that whale. If they have identified the whale, they know more about that individual. In some cases, they can't identify the individual, but they have the information about those animals in general. So whenever they're going to take a skin sample from a whale, they try to get a lot of photographs so they can later identify the individual if it's in the database. Good question, Laura and Bella. All right, let's go on to our next page. Now, I have, in the couple of minutes I have left, I'm going to test you on your photo ID skills. So these are two different pictures. Oh, that's okay. We accidentally went forward one spot. We'll go back. But that is a blue whale. So keep thinking of blue whales, and we'll show you our blue whale picture. This is an actual test from our database. We pulled a picture from 2011 and 2013. And let's see if you can figure out if this is the same whale or not. Can you identify any features between these two whales? Now, this is a tougher one because the whale is not in the same angle, and it's not even the same lighting. Now, I did brighten this picture up a little bit. So this whale behind me is very perpendicular to the camera. This whale is a little bit of an angle. Now, in low light, it can be even tougher to try and get a picture off of this. So if my friend Amanda pushes the next button on our whale pictures, let's take a look. This little blotch pattern here and this one here directly match. So let's take a look at the top one. You have this dark patch with this light kind of branch or kidney bean shape into it. Well, at a slightly different angle, that's what it's supposed to look like. Now, if we go down here, like, oh, maybe that's not really my matching feature. Let's take another test. We have this little area right here with this spot hanging out in the middle. We come down here, same pattern. So we don't just do one or two spots. Like testing fingerprints, we'll take 3 to 5 or more different little spots, and we'll try to match up them between two whales. And if they're the same whale, we tag the pictures with the identifying alphanumeric code that we assign to them. We're not necessarily the ones that name the whales, but we might offer suggestions to the researchers that do. And the really fun thing that I have seen in the data that comes back to me from Cascadia Research Collective is that our pictures have this little code on them. We're seeing pictures in the new database of known whales that we were the first ones to ever find this whale that anybody else knows of. So I think that's amazing that our interns are out there and they're helping to find new blue whales that no one has recorded in the database yet. So that I love that we get to see that. Now, London has a picture. Do whales give live birth? Good question, London. So let's think about what group of animals whales belong to. They're like us in that they're mammals. You remember all your mammal features? So breathes air, has hair or fur at least at some point in their life, nurses from mom, so mom is creating milk for them to feed off of, and live birth make mammals mammals. So they do have live birth. Now here's an interesting question back for you, London, and all of our friends viewing right now. So when people are born, we try to have a person born head first. So they come out head first. Is it the same for whales? What do you think? Where are whales born? Do whales go up on the beach to have their babies? No, they're staying in the ocean. So do they have babies head first or tail first? Well, I'll give you a hint. Remember, they breathe air. And if they're underwater, they can't breathe air. They come out tail first. The reason for that, the adaptation, is so that the last part of the whale that comes out, comes out of the birth canal, is the head, and then immediately mom will lift the baby up to the surface of the water so it can get its first breath of air. That is an amazing adaptation that they have. They don't have hospitals and doctors and other people that figure this out for them. They just figured this out on their own, and over time, nature created a good adaptation for them so that they could survive and maintain their species in their habitat. All right, I think I have maybe one more question coming in from my friend Alicia. We'll go over to just a studio picture of our blue whale because it is a really fun picture. If you look really closely at the studio picture, you can see that at the angle, this whale is not just plump. This is the expansion of the throat pleats. So this whale has a lot of water in its mouth, and it's waiting to squirt that water out. So this isn't just, it's a big whale, but it's big because the throat is holding so much water at that moment that it's able to feed from. So here's kind of like a cross-section view of our whale. So if they're feeding, the baleen hangs from the top jaw. They expand their throat to hold up all that water. That's okay, our picture went black. This is what it looks like in the deep ocean. Okay, so here's back to our studio. So, and when they close their mouth, they don't want the food getting out, so the baleen stops it, and then they squirt the water out through their lips. So that's how that works out. That's how they feed. All right, our last couple questions, and then we'll have to let you all go for the afternoon. I really appreciate your questions, and don't forget, if you're not watching live, you can email us questions live@lbaop.org. Okay, so why do whales migrate between the Channel Islands and the California coast rather than on the western or outer part of the island? Well, some of them are doing both. Fin whales are an exception to what we consider how whales migrate. So let's take the gray whale example first. Gray whales go all the way from Alaska down to Mexico. They do tend to stay within a certain range of the coastline. They follow it to get down to Mexico. Now, the area that they like to swim in, they could be inside the Channel Islands. They could be outside the Channel Islands. Remember, there's about 26,000 gray whales, but we have not seen every one of them. So some of them do go on the outside of the islands, and we have not been able to photograph them yet. Now, we'll go back to the fin whale example. The fin whales, they don't go by the rules that we made up, basically. So they don't migrate north or south at all that we can tell. At least the Pacific fin whales don't. They more or less go near shore to offshore. So they kind of move east and west rather than north and south. But they're not moving to a warmer climate to have babies. And they don't always have to be there. We can see fin whales year-round. There's no change in their seasonality for us, except if it's really cold in the winter, we tend to see more just in the winter. But we'll still see them in the hot of the summer sometimes. So they don't really go by the same north-south pattern. Pretty good questions. All right, London's brother, getting the family involved. I like it. Do whales eat meat or vegetables? Well, whales are carnivores. So what are they eating? Animals. So that means they eat meat. Now, that doesn't mean that they might not accidentally eat some algae in their life, but they're not trying to eat algae, so that's more an accident that they have than if they don't. So they're trying to eat just the animals, so they're a carnivore. They eat meat. Now, Laura asks, is there a record of all the different sounds whales make? Good segue. So Laura and all our other friends out there watching, if you want to explore some more about whales, you can go to our website, or you can look it up on the internet, for Whales Voices in the Sea. It's a great online exhibit where you can listen to whale sounds and learn a little bit more about each of the species represented there. I will tell you, whale sounds are unique between each species. So there's a lot to learn about how they're talking to each other and what does that mean. So check out our Whales Voices in the Sea exhibit online. Now, last question we'll get to answer today is, are whales endangered? That is a good thing to be mindful of. Now, endangered is there's not a lot of them left. We have either negatively interact with these animals, so we've removed them from the environment, or the environment has changed so vastly or quickly that they can't survive in there. Well, for whales, they were hunted a lot in history, and they were used for food. For their blubber was boiled into whale oil, which was a very clean burning lantern fuel. And to this day, we don't really need to use whales, but whales are still being taken out of the ocean in some cases. Now, there's something called the International Whaling Commission that tries to control who's doing what and provide some guidance as to how that works. Now, there's a lot of species that are endangered. If you want to learn more about a particular endangered cetacean or whale or dolphin, you can go back to look at our other Career Connection video from our education director, Dave Bader, about the vaquita and its conservation. All right. Can kids be interns? So what should you do if you want to study whales? Well, getting that experience is important. So you can volunteer, you can be an intern at an institution that has these offered to you. Now, here at the Aquarium of the Pacific, we don't have a specific rule about the younger age of interns. However, because of the nature of the photo ID internship program and the complexity of some of the job tasks, we only bring in people who are either in college or older than college aged. And that's just because of the tasks that we ask you to complete. There's other internships and programs where you can get involved earlier when you're in high school, or even in our education department, you can be a family volunteer as a young person. So there's a lot of opportunities to get into a zoo or aquarium setting. So if you want to have a job in the field, though, get that experience behind the scenes, doing other internships and volunteering. But typically you have to have a degree in some kind of biology. Now, the post-grad degrees, that changes. You may not have to have a master's or doctoral degree depending on what you want to do. If you want to teach or work at a university, you tend to have a PhD. You can have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree to be a field biologist. The guru of blue whales, Dr. John Kalambakidis, actually he's not a doctor, he only has a bachelor's degree. So John Kalambakidis is widely regarded as the guru of blue whales, but he has a bachelor's degree. So don't feel like degrees are a limitation. You can graduate from college and still do a lot of different things. Now, check out our website and you can look for more volunteering or job-related experiences. You can also start looking at job boards and posts about internships for this program. There's a lot of photo ID programs and internships around the country. We are unique in that we get to have the interns and our naturalists here in Long Beach out on a whale watch boat with Harbor Breeze Cruises. Thank you everyone for viewing at home, and don't forget to have fun and explore. Also a lovely picture our interns have taken from our boats. Not photoshopped. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, everybody, and thanks for watching.